Welcome to What Brought You Here Today, an interview-style mental health podcast that focuses on real experiences and how we navigate and move through them. The guests on this show provide personal and professional insight at times and come from all walks of life. Not all of the guests work in the mental health field, and they've all chosen to be brave and vulnerable while sharing parts of their story with you. Please keep your own mental health and well-being in mind while listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to What Brought You Here Today. I'm your host, Ryan, and today I am joined by Candace. She is an LMFT and registered play therapist, and I'm so excited to have her on. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Great. Why don't you tell listeners a little bit about your background, who you are, what you do?
Oh, sure. Yes. Well, as Ryan said, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a registered play therapist supervisor. I have been practicing for a little over 11 years now, and I own a private practice in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. I had originally opened my business up in the Twin Cities in 2020 and then decided to have just a shift in my life and move closer to where I'm originally from. I came down here to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and I serve kids birth to 12 and they're grown-ups.
How did you know going into grad school that birth to 12 was going to be your age range?
I did not know in the sense that it was just going to be the only population I wanted to serve primarily. I just always knew, though, I wanted to work with children.
Yeah.
So when I actually started studying at the University of Minnesota for undergrad, my major was going to be psychology. And then I heard that they had a child psych program. So I switched gears mentally and declared that as my official major.
Oh, okay. Very fun. Let's talk about play therapy. What is
Yeah.
play therapy?
Yes, that's a great question. 'Cause the Association for Play Therapy has a very specific definition. How I like to say it is that play therapy is just the therapeutic modality where we use the therapeutic powers of play in sessions with children and teens. So as of now, there are at least 22 play therapy modalities, theories, and frameworks out there. And there are officially more, but I only know of 22 at this point. But I've heard talk around other ones. And so we are using our psychology, child psychology backgrounds and graduate school training and implementing all of that information and combining it with play and bringing that into sessions. And it depending on how old the kids are and teens that you work with and the lens that you come from, sessions can look very different clinician to clinician. But the main point is that we are just using what children use naturally to help them heal and process life stressors or traumas or just stuff.
Yeah. How is that different? I have historically worked with children and adolescents. I'm not a registered play therapist. I do
Hmm.
incorporate play, and
Hmm.
I do not, like, from my knowledge of play therapy, which is different, my play is like different
Hmm.
than a play therapy standpoint. So, like, how do
Hmm.
you address that with people who are like, all you do is play games? Or,
Yes, classic question that I've gotten
uh
many a times over the years. Well, if it's a grown up, like a parent or a caregiver asking, then my response tends to be something along the lines of, well, what we know from the data is that play allows the child to make sense of their world and grow in all sorts of different life skills, social skills. And so we are using, again, what's natural to the child in their therapeutic healing. So I compare it to a grown-up session, right? We as adults go into therapy and usually there's a component related to talk. So we are coming in and we're processing by talking to our therapist about the stressors of the day, stressors of our relationships, stressors, traumas from our past. Maybe there's some body component in there that helps us process and heal. And that's the same concept as what we're doing as registered play therapists or clinicians that incorporate play. They're just processing through the play versus through the talk. And especially that early childhood age, that birth to 6, it's just not appropriate for them to sit on my couch and have a conversation to make sense of their world. So that's how I would answer it if the grown up themselves were asking the question. If it's a clinician, like a fellow colleague, my answer is just really it comes down to coming from a theoretical orientation. If you have toys or games in your office, that's great. You're meeting the child or the teen where they're at developmentally. And if you're not coming from a theoretical orientation, then that doesn't necessarily make it play therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've never advertised as a play therapist. I incorporate play, but I think to your point, explaining it of play really helps the child come out of their shell a little bit. It does they haven't really gained the skills to sit and just have a full 55-minute conversation. And it really amazes me when you reframe it of, yes, we do play games, but also this is how your child opens up and expresses themselves so that we can make progress in therapy. And play is really important for things like emotional regulation, distress tolerance, sharing, playing with others. And I feel like I find myself more now, and maybe you do or don't experience this, but the pandemic kids, especially maybe 8, 9, 10, who really lost out on some of those formative years and formative experiences of now as the therapist having to set some of those situations up through play.
Yes, 100% to everything you just said. You don't think about it when you're just with your child or let's say, excuse me, you're an uncle or an aunt and you're playing with your niece and nephew and you guys are just playing sorry. It's really about fun. And maybe, right, in that type of environment, just naturally as the grown up, you're going to get frustrated because your kid's trying to cheat. Well, in the therapy room, that's a whole different experience, right? We as the grown-ups may still feel that internally. Oh, what's that? What are you doing? Right? But that's not the time for us to implement such type of life lesson. Depending again, though, on your theoretical orientation. Some theoretical orientations might say, no, you're supposed to shut it down and you're that boundaries and limits, and you're supposed to help that child with their distress tolerance so that they don't cheat and they can follow the rules. Other theoretical orientations say, no, you just go with the child's lead. You let them cheat because they're trying to work something out or they're trying to feel more empowered. And in one of the modalities that I'm trained in and that I use primarily, a typical situation would be that the child is cheating and I'm reflecting my felt sense of, oh man, you always get to win and I never get to win. And man, I didn't think of that. I should have done it that way. Something like that. Because what we know is that my internal experience and felt sense is most of the time what the child actually experiences day to day. So that reflection helps them to, again, process and heal through that play interaction, even though the non-therapist part of me wants to be like, oh, don't cheat. Like I was so close to winning and you just sent me back home or whatever you're doing.
Yep. Oh yeah. Sorry is a tough game.
I just got whooped in that yesterday. I was so close to winning. And then there was like 4 sorries in a row and I had to start all over. And I'm like, Karen, I just want to
Same
win.
with Trouble. Trouble's another one.
Yes. And Uno. I was just talking with some colleagues on Facebook. It is so hard to purposefully lose that Uno, but sometimes in the therapy room, we have to do it. Yeah. So I've been known sometimes to hide cards in my pocket so I can lose. Yeah. It's not easy. It's not an easy game to lose that on purpose. But yeah, you got to try it though.
I don't know if I could sneak some cards away. I'm going to try though.
Yeah, you have to be very sick. You have to take one of those moments that happens eventually where the child looks around the room or they just yap and you're like, oh, and shove it back there really quick, but not make it known that you're doing something like that. But sometimes that doesn't even work, right? You sneak the card in your back pocket and you still end up winning and the child is distraught. So then you have to work with that.
Yeah. What about infant mental health? When we're talking about that, I feel like a lot of people maybe don't know the importance of the 0 to 5 age and the impact that therapeutic services can have.
Yes, that's something that I feel like depending on where you are in our country, you'll get a different mindset and right different information about this population. In general, in the infant and early childhood mental health world, we all believe that this work is necessary. It's preventative in nature. It can really turn life trajectories around. And now, is it a 100% change? No, of course not. We can help folks get on a better path to life, but then who knows what the future is going to hold for them. But we just know so much science. We have so much science now that shows the evidence of what happens to a developing brain from conception to up to the age of 6 and how life impacts that brain negatively, positively, neutrally, and most of the time, the combination of all of those. So, what irks me always with doing this work is we have all this data, yet we are still fighting tooth and nail to get whether it's mental health services for this population and their grown-ups or ECFE, early childhood family education services, or better quality childcare centers, play-based school environments versus academic-based. We know what we need as humans, and yet the people in power don't really seem to heed our warnings or heed our data, and things just continue to be challenging and challenging.
Yeah. What have you seen? I feel like in the last couple weeks, there's been a lot more articles coming out about the impact of COVID on kids. And
Uh,
what are you seeing in your own practice, in your own clinical work of what, how 2020 and the last 4 years has impacted
yeah,
kids?
yes, it's been a very interesting experience. I feel like 2020 was a complicated year for all of us. We were all scrambling in our own ways, trying to understand just the world around us and what does all this mean for us. My prediction back then, even though it was only what we're at July 25th, only 4 years ago, but it feels like forever ago. My prediction back then was that I was going to be seeing the kids born in 2020, 2021, 2022 in my play therapy room. And I'd have to do quick math, but if they're not already here, they're on their way. And the main thing that I'm noticing, and whether I can contribute this to 20 or not, I'm not sure yet. But I will say that I've seen a decline in children's natural ability to play and to engage in their version of imaginative play. Um, I've seen some kids over the last few years, even 5, 6, 7 year olds come into the play therapy room and they have no idea what to do. Or they they're perceiving that the toys make them come off as if they're babies and they're childish. And that's always an interesting thing to hear from a young child that these are baby toys. I don't want to play with the dollhouse. I don't want to play with puppets. And then they really struggle to start that process. So there could be many other reasons why that happens, but I am finding that connection in some regard. Socially, I'm seeing that seems to be harder for kids these days. Just how do I interact with my peers and how do I share my feelings and how do I set boundaries? How do I get through conflict? So again, I'd have to think really hard if that's directly related to 2020 or just a general shift and decline for kids these days. It's just an interesting time to serve children.
Yeah. And I think with the increase in screen time is it has its pros and cons. And I think it's a
Yep,
very individualized family specific thing to talk
absolutely.
about. But yeah, I do think that that has had an impact on learning how to play and use your imagination.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because we have a play therapy modality called digital play therapy created by Dr. Jessica Stone. And admittedly, I will say, I'm going to stop before I get ahead of myself, that I haven't studied that modality yet. But from what I understand a little bit about it, and even just using virtual means into whether it's play therapy or talk therapy or play based therapy, express therapy, whatever, all the different ways, there does seem to be some interesting value where we can see children going into a digital world somehow and working through their stress, their traumas, their challenges in a playful way. I have a colleague out in England and she uses Minecraft in her sessions with children and teens. And just listening to her talk about how to do that and what that means, it's just fascinating to me. I'm a product of the 80s and 90s, right? Super Nintendo, Super
Yeah.
Mario World, Donkey Kong, right? Zelda. I never would have imagined that a video game could have had some type of value to my mental health, but we didn't think about that back then. We were as kids not in that world. Our parents were not in that world. If anything, I feel like our parents were trying to make sense of instant messenger and email for us,
Right.
not video games. But just hearing colleagues talk about how you can reflect themes and know to the themes that the child is working through using digital means and video games, I think it's brilliant. If you're interested in that as a clinician and you can serve your population with that means, and we can see evidence that it works, great. It's just so fascinating to me on how that can be done. I even watch my nephew play Minecraft, and I don't reflect therapeutically to him, but I think in my head, if he were my client, okay, I see that now. I see that connection. I see this. I see that. Oh, I get that now. I see what he is doing and why that fits for him and what is he getting out of it. So
Mhm.
it's very cool.
Yeah. And on that, maybe this is everywhere, but I feel like particularly in the Twin Cities, because that's where I'm based. There's been also an influx of like Dungeons and Dragons being used therapeutically
Uh-huh.
and like therapeutic
Yes.
group Dungeons and Dragons. And I owe it like I don't know anything about that. I will
Yeah,
own
same.
that. It's complex. There's just a lot that goes into it. But I'm always curious to be a fly on the wall in those settings of how one to see adolescents or adults getting into their imaginative brain and their creative brain to play out these
Mm.
complex situations in game form.
Yes.
And then how does that in turn help them process therapeutically? And I'm
Yes.
like,
Right.
what? Yeah.
Very interesting.
Mhm.
Yes. And speaking of Dungeons and Dragons, I'm actually in the home of D&D. My practice is in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. I think I mentioned that at the beginning,
Yeah.
but that is where D&D was created.
Okay.
So
Maybe
yeah,
they
if
have a lot
any
of
of you,
groups there too.
they probably are. There's probably groups out there. I know there's a game store in town that they have a back room where you can come with yourself or with others and just sit and play games.
Wow.
And they even have their own Discord channel where you can go in there and just make connections. I've thought about getting in there I used to play board games in my past life and I really miss it because I don't do that now. And I would love to just hook up with some folks once a month and just sit there for a few hours and play different games. I'm actually an adult in a Lego even. So I build Lego sets and just watching people on Facebook using their imagination to create their own creations. I'm blown away what the human mind is capable of building out of Lego. I can't do that. I have to have my instruction manual, but people are building cities and monuments and even little playhouses for their
Yeah.
children out of Lego. And I'm like, how are you doing that? It's just, and what's so funny to me is that, right, we don't shame adults. Well, maybe some people do, but I don't really hear it a lot of, oh, you're an adult who builds Lego. Oh, you're an adult who plays board games, or you're an adult who plays video games. And that's cool. But when we look at kids, yes, we need to be mindful of their development, but it's always so negative. It seems. Oh, your kid plays video games. Yeah. Well, us 80s and 90s kids, we grew up with that stuff. And again, pros and cons, but you have to be, I think, more just less reactionary, if you will.
And I think for a lot of kids and a lot of kids that I've met, video games have a very positive impact.
Oh, for sure.
Right? And
Mhm.
they're socializing and they're getting on there playing with friends or other people and they're learning how to show up as the person that they want to be and have some more autonomy of how they show up for things and
Yeah.
how they process and react and respond, which I think is
Yes.
can be really cool and really impactful for them as their own person.
Absolutely. And now to take that further, whether it's in the play therapy office or just at home in your family room, if you're observing a child play, you're going to see that anyways, especially if
Mhm.
a child is, I want to be mindful of my words, but if they are able to connect to that part of themselves, right? I'm sure people listening, if you have young children, you can absolutely reflect on, oh, yeah, my kid just dressed up as a pirate the other day and they were playing pirates. Or we went outside for a walk and my kid grabbed a stick and we started battling. We see that in the virtual world as well. And in the board game world, I played World of Warcraft in college. I wasn't dressing up as the night elf, but I was playing a night elf and I was getting my job done. So that is play. It just looks differently. And if anything, with COVID, what I've come to learn, amongst a million other things, and this kind of leads into that neurodiversity affirming piece that I know we're going to get to today. We need to be more respectful that some people are just better at socializing in a digital capacity versus sitting in a room together. And that's okay. If they're functioning grown-ups, functioning kids, and they have that ability to socialize and that ability to handle life, right? In whatever capacity, who cares really how they get it done, right? Who cares if it's in person or talking virtually, whether it's texting or even what you and I are doing. We're on Zoom together and we're having a social interaction.
Yep.
It's okay that some people do it that way and some people do it other ways.
Yeah. On the topic of neurodiversity affirming, how does that look different, or like what does that look like in compared to neurotypical maybe?
Yeah, that is, oh gosh, we could do a deep dive and I'm still learning, and I'll just be very honest with you. I'm still learning this world, if you will, the affirming world of neurodiversity. I actually for today have my neurodiversity
I love it.
shirt on. For those who, I know you can't see me, but it's like a black t-shirt with a bunch of brains on it and the brains have different colors. And I even just read this book to a client last night, Neurodiversity, What's That? An Introduction to Neurodiversity for Kids. And this is just a beautiful book if you serve children and teens who are neurodivergent. So I'm now in this, with this lens rather, of the world because I am a late diagnosed ADHDer. So I'm 36 now. At 35 last spring, I finally decided to go through my own neuropsych eval with a psychologist. And I just needed answers. The more I was diving into the ADHD world, I discovered all this fits for me. I'm really struggling in these different areas and I need answers. I need to be better able to manage my life and understand like why certain things are so hard for me when I have friends and family that can do X, Y, Z easily. And I said, information is information, as scary as it could be. At least I'll know something. And it came out that, yeah, I have an ADHD brain. And I hate to admit this publicly, but I was one of those therapists who did not want to work with kids who are neurodivergent because I didn't know what, quote unquote, what to do with them. How do I serve them in my office? What do I do for them? What does this look like in the play therapy room? And sadly, I was influenced by the negative viewpoint that our society has on neurodivergent kids. Autistic kids are nonverbal. They just sit there and they don't say anything. When they can't play, they can't look at you. ADHDers are just hyperactive and they can't sit still and they don't have the capacity to do anything in a focused manner. And I shifted my mindset. I'm like, that can't be true. That cannot be true for all these kids. And I did more research and got into just more resources, talking with more colleagues, even who are also neurodivergent, and realizing this spectrum of neurodiversity is huge. It's so big. And I've actually gone through my own grief process, just grieving my life, honestly, grieving my entire life and looking back at my childhood and thinking about how I fell into the cracks, especially in the school system, because I did not, as a female, I did not present as a typical quote unquote ADHDer. So, and that's no fault to anybody, my teachers, my parents, nobody. It was just the reality. And now, thankfully, we have more understanding of how could girls present with an ADHD brain, but we still have work to do to understanding and then being affirming. And so I actually discovered Ought Play therapy, which is a neurodiversity affirming play therapy framework created by Dr. Grant. And he really talks about how you can put this framework into however you're practicing as a play therapist, but even as a clinician in general. And one of the main tenets is really the neurodiversity affirming paradigm. And there's many pieces to that paradigm, but just really, even what this book says is that neurodiversity is just that. It's just diversity, right? Our race, our genders, our cultures are all diverse. Turns out so are our brains. And how do we sit in respect and strength for ourselves and for our fellow humans and just honor that all of our brains are different. And truly, we need neurodiversity. We need different brains in order for our society to function. And there's a page in the back of this book here towards the end of the story that I thought was just really brilliant of the author to include this. And she said, for example, an ADHD gymnast has won more than 25 Olympic and world championship medals. That's Simone Biles, I'm pretty sure. And an impressive dyspraxic actor played the lead role in a series of magical films. That's Daniel Radcliffe playing Harry Potter. I did not know, I don't know 100% what dyspraxic is, but I didn't know that he was neurodivergent. And so just knowing that people we see and follow have different brains, it's just really important, right? For representation and for kids to stay in healthy self-esteem.
Yeah. I think dyspraxia is a lack of coordination,
Actually,
like a developmental coordination. Is that?
you know what? She actually has a glossary in the back of the book here. Dyspraxia, also known as developmental coordination disorder. You got it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
If you are dyspraxic, you may have difficulty with coordination imbalance. There you go.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Who would know those things, right? Like
Right.
I think we don't. We're such a physical world and like physical appearance, physical features. And how do we get to a place where just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think going back to like your experience in the school setting, being like identifying female and being a girl in the education system in the 90s and early 2000s when it wasn't, not that you were overlooked, it just wasn't a thing, right? Like
Right.
you're not bouncing off the walls, then you're fine.
Right. Yes. But nobody knew that all the bouncing off the walls was inside my brain. The typical feedback at the parent teacher conferences. And I laugh at this now because I've been able to put all this stuff together and it makes me laugh and then also makes me sad. But the typical feedback to my parents were, Candace is great, you guys. She's a beautiful person. She's a fun student. She's so friendly. People love her. She's a great helper. She talks a lot and she gets distracted easily, or she seems to check out. And then when she does talk a lot, she's distracting others. And I was never, thankfully, my parents just weren't like this. They didn't punish me. They just said, hey, you got to focus more. You got to stop talking. You got to pay attention to the teacher. And I'm like, I think I am. I thought I was. And I didn't even really have enough insight into that idea that I was talking a lot. I have insight now. I very much am aware when people are starting to glaze over and they're like, Candace, get to the point. But for me, and what I'm learning about ADHD and even just applies to other neurotypes is that I believe all the information I have to share is important and it's vital to the story, but not everybody feels that way. So it's just interesting. That was a consistent piece of feedback. But no teachers also had the knowledge and understanding to be like, hey, mom and dad, this is a theme, right? I'm seeing this documented from even as far back as kindergarten, first grade. And why don't we go through some testing? Why don't we get her maybe a 504 plan even, or an IEP if it helps her feel goodness? If I had that ability to focus better and find what works for me back then, my life would be so different now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be so stressed out in a lot of
Yeah. And I think there's a huge component of generally as a female being able to mask better, right? Like being able to hide it and conceal it and work and seemingly work through it.
Yes.
We don't always make it that far, but being the masking piece is so so big. And I feel like I'm like seeing that a lot more in the kids that I do still work with. And I don't know if it's just the nature of the public school system, but also feeling a little more of suppression of some of these things. You can't act out in the school setting. You have to sit there and do all of these things. And that's a really big ask for 5, 6, 7, 8, any age really, to sit and focus for 6, 7, 8 hours. And now I have a lot of my daughter's going into kindergarten next year, is
Fun.
2025. And we're like starting this whole journey. And I'm like, I have a lot of resources and awareness I don't want that to be her experience in school. Right.
Yeah.
And so like, how do we like as parents, like balance this really fine line of the public school system and what it's turning out to be? And I think especially here in Minneapolis, it's just always seems to be crumbling. It's always,
Yes.
like,
Yes. Yes. I'm just sitting and processing for a second because it is such a heavy topic. And I feel your stress and I feel your concern. And I hear a similar story often from other parents.
mhm,
And it can be really overwhelming. My dad actually, before he went into the insurance industry, he actually was a teacher. And when he did go into the insurance industry, he focused on serving teachers primarily. He served other folks
mm,
as well, but primarily teachers. And it's just been an interesting thing to even talk to him, right? And his experience as a teacher, then serving teachers as an insurance agent, and being very well versed in the public education school system in the county that I'm from, and just bringing these different topics to the table of conversation and hearing his perspective and how things have shifted positively and negatively over the years. Me bringing some education and perspective to him where he's had to sit there and really ponder and go, yeah, some of that does apply actually to my line of work, but we didn't talk about it then. We didn't think about it then,
yeah.
right? Even when I was a teacher, we didn't think in those ways. And just, it always goes back, for me at least, to that concept of when you know better, you do better, ideally. Even in the OTPLAY certification process, I'm an OTPLAY practitioner now, but that doesn't mean my journey of knowledge is done. I'm still growing in this lens and knowledge. But I remember at one point in the training, I heard Dr. Grant say, and I might have misheard him, but someone said something about like IEPs can actually be ableist in nature, trying to get the kid to fit into a box that they are not designed to fit into. And I think even just like I said earlier with the infant and early childhood mental health world, and just not having the data actually applied to make positive change, we can apply that concept to this topic too. Teachers are so burned out. They're so overwhelmed. The money sometimes is not there. The resources sometimes are not there. And that's a systemic problem and that needs to change. And I will always back a teacher. And we don't hold them in high enough value in our culture. But I think with the proper knowledge, we can make some helpful change. For a kid who focuses better by fidgeting, if we can allow them the opportunity to be who they are so that then they can focus and respond to the teacher and the classmates and do what they need to do. Really, my question to a lot of folks is, why does it matter? There's a difference between a child focusing by fidgeting and the whole class is disrupted, including that child. But if they're sitting there and you're just doing this, like moving something in their hand or tapping slightly, and it's not bothering anybody, why do we get so mad about that stuff? If some kids have to get a wiggle chair and move in their chair or have to go stand up, if it's better to just stand in the back of the classroom and do a couple jumping jacks, get their nervous system re-regulated and then come back. Why does it matter? I think we get so bent out of shape about the wrong stuff. And even a neurotypical kid, kids in general are just not designed to sit there for 8 hours. Like you said, they are meant to move and talk and sing and make random noises and wiggle their bodies. And we take that away from them. And I don't remember who, but I remember someone saying they brought my attention to the concept of childism. that we are a culture that has childism as well. And that's not a positive thing. That what they were getting at is that means we seem to be so anti-child here. We punish them, we shame them. We are so focused on consequences and behavior elimination. We don't focus enough on, okay, who is the child as a human and what works for them? And how do we as grown-ups honor that and help them be who they are in the best way possible? And parenting is hard. Being a teacher is hard. Serving children is hard. It's not easy. And how can we just have more grace for them as a human being? And I don't think we're there yet. I think we're maybe on our way, but I truly believe we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
To really be a culture that says, oh, this little girl, this little boy, this little kid, this works for you. Not a problem.
Right.
Do it.
Yeah. I think going back to the IEP and the 504 plan, I have this conversation so much of that, yes, they serve a purpose and yes, they can be helpful, but you also will have to continually advocate
Mhm.
that they are receiving those resources because resources are so limited and teachers
Mhm.
and staff are so burned out. I have had
Yes.
so many kids come in and they're like, they're not, can you try and call the school? They're not getting like their social skills crew. We have tried, can you try? Maybe coming from the therapist will be different. And you will, this is a forever journey for you
Yep.
to advocate for your child. And regardless of if there's an IEP or a 504 plan, but specifically in the school setting, if they
Mhm.
do need those resources, you have to be on top of it.
Yeah.
And that is
Absolutely.
exhausting and takes so much energy and time
Mhm.
and effort. And I think bringing it full circle, it's also for the school, like, why does it actually matter? Like, why can't we
Yes.
just get the kid who is having trouble sitting still a wobble stool? Why do we have to
Yes.
go through this months long, sometimes year long process to create an IEP when just getting that would have reduced or mitigated the issue to begin with?
Yes. I
What?
know. I
Give
know.
give the kid a
It,
standing desk. Like, what? I
yes.
don't, yeah. And I know I will never claim to understand it. And again, it's the systemic issue of
Mhm.
resources are limited, then one kid gets one,
Yes.
everyone gets one.
But not every
Those
kid
feelings are
needs
still
one.
right. And those feelings are still there regardless of if there's an educational document in place or not.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And I like how you said that idea, maybe, oh, well, if we have to spend money on one kid, we have to spend money on every kid. Kids are not always like that, though. Not every kid has a competition nature, right? Not every kid has to have what the kid next door has. Some kids do, right? If they're raised in that environment of we have to keep up with the Joneses, right?
Yeah.
Or if you have a sibling and you've been raised to expect, oh, my sibling gets this, I get it too, then that's a parenting and a family issue and a
Mhm.
dynamic that most likely I'd recommend needs to shift. But I don't know most kids that would sit there and go, well, Susie has a wobble chair. That's not fair. I want
Right.
one. If anything, maybe they're going to say, hey, Susie, can I try your wobbly chair? And then they
Yeah.
get that need met and then they move about their day, you
Yeah.
know? But I love how you talked about that advocacy part. I promote that as well. I like to do presentations in the community and I title one of them The Importance and Power of Play. And it's all about play and why children need play. And I bring in some data about how play has declined over the years and why kids need risky play, right? Why do they need to climb on the structures and balance on the curb? And why is it okay that they fall and scrape their knee and all those things? But I end the presentation always with essentially a call to action to those who come. And I say, it's your voice that matters most. You need to go to the school meetings and PTE meetings and all the other meetings and bring the research and print it off or bring a PD or a stick drive of PDFs and say, here, put this in the computer group and read these documents. We need to, we need this information. We need to do something with it and hold these people accountable. Why are our kids only going out for recess for 20 minutes a day?
Me
That's,
started.
that's, yeah. Well, I know, right? Same with me. It's mind boggling. Like, why are we even taking recess away from middle schoolers and high schoolers? So what?
Right.
They're going to go sit outside and maybe they don't move and they just sit there and talk. Or if they're allowed their phones in that hour, they're on their phones. But Get them outside, get them away from the computers, away from their desks, away from the four walls, and let their nervous systems settle in nature. Again, why is math trumping who we are as human beings? We can't do math successfully if our brains and our nervous systems are all jumbled up inside, or we're not being able to, we can't focus because we can't move. We're not allowed to move. It's counterintuitive to me how the system is and how it continues to be.
Yeah. It's become like overly complicated. It doesn't have to be this rigid. It doesn't have to be this, rigid, complicated. Like, we're only creating more work for everybody else and not focusing on the kids.
Yes. It's like Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid versus how about the vaccine in the wound, for goodness sakes? So then we don't need Band-Aids anymore. And that's why the infant mental health world is so powerful to me and why it's such a passion for me. Because again, like I said, you can't 100% prevent challenge in a person's life. And if we can get them in somewhat of a right foot or healthier foot from the beginning, then that does make some type of impact later on. Prevention is everything. But when you don't have a sick society, some people are not rich. That's really also what it comes down to too.
Yeah.
You know? So many systems. Where's Mr. Rogers? Can he come back? Can God
we have
send him
Daniel
back?
Tiger. We have Daniel Tiger.
Thank God for Daniel Tiger. He at least is forever because he's a cartoon. But I watch old clips of Mr. Rogers, and did you ever see that one of him? I don't know who he sat in front of, but some political group. He was in some kind of meeting of some kind, and he was advocating, what was it? To continue PBS or to continue something, and the group up at the stand was going to say no to it. But at the end of Mr. Rogers' time, they were like, yeah, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. And I'm sitting there sobbing. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy was so brilliant.
Yeah. We're almost to the end of our time, but the power dynamic has just shifted so much and the focus has just shifted so much. And it really, I think, needs to start shifting back to the kids and the importance. Yes, education is important. No one will deny that. But also taking away really important pieces like play and movement and nature. Kids need to go outside.
Yes.
Like point blank, like they need sun and fresh air to regulate their nervous system and get them back in their thinking brains. Like we could probably, again, have a whole episode on this.
Bring me back. We'll just talk about that. We'll put it on those topics. Absolutely. That's what children need. So I don't know why it's so hard for them to get what they need.
Yes. And it's really disheartening and really frustrating.
It is. And I think I know you feel it too as someone that serves children and teens. It can make our job really tough, right? We can go home at the end of the day and feel very heavy at the weight of all of this. And it just speaks to that we need to continue doing our self-care, that we, even as grownups, need to be green, getting into nature, connecting with what brings our passions out, and trying to find that hope again, and trying to find that drive that continues to push us. If we're at burnout level, obviously we need to do even more of that, and we need to maybe make some changes of our own. But I think that's why people's stories are so powerful. And that's why I love my work as hard as it can be. And even when I'm at burnout level, I do look forward to hearing people's stories. And kids tell their story through play, right? And through expressive means. They're bringing us into their world by playing. And just to be in the presence of a person's story is amazing. And we need to do more of that, I think, is just by talking to each other and listening more and getting to know who the person is on like a base level. That's really important. But that's like the fun part of my job is, I get to play all day, but it's just so much more than that.
Yeah. And I think maybe as a final thought, like kids are human beings too.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
And I think that is getting lost in the mix.
Absolutely. And not every human being is the same, nor should we be. What a boring world that would be if everyone wore the same color, looked the same way, talked the same way, and thought the same way, we wouldn't have the magic that is Harry Potter without, of course, J.K. Rowling was the creator, but Daniel Radcliffe brought that character to light in movie form. Right. Even in this book, This Neurodiversity, what's that book? She even mentions what I'm pretty sure is Bill Gates, or who I'm pretty sure is Bill Gates with Microsoft. And we need everyone's different brains. And it's okay if a kid gets the answer that you're looking for by thinking outside of the box. Like if the main goal is they answered the question correctly, let's honor them that they did it how they did it. It's okay that it's not what tradition says. As long as no one's hurting themselves or others, who cares on how a child gets to the answer? Really, that needs to be the question that I think all of us in authority and power need to be asking ourselves when we are in some position of serving kids.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much. I think we will definitely need to plan a second episode because I feel like there's so much more to uncover and talk about, and
scratching the surface.
Just scratching the surface. And I think we're also in a really heightened time politically. And so as the next year goes on, it'll be curious to see what changes do come from that and how will the next couple of years play out. And we'll have you back on before that. But
for sure. Well, I'm holding my breath. That'll be curious to see what the future holds.
Yeah. Again,
trying to stay hopeful.
Yeah, same. That's all we can do, right? Keep the hope.
Yes.
So
yes.
Thank you again so much.
Yeah,
this has been such a pleasure. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Let me hit.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to learn more or follow either of us on social media, you can find more information in the show notes. Thanks for your support and listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.